3 years, 3 companies have disappeared. The 3 biggest online companies have disappeared, and north of $70 million of client money is gone forever. Let's talk about Miles Franklin. We've maintained an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau the entire length of time that we have been doing this. We've been doing this 27 years. We have done just south of $6 billion in sales. And in the 27 years we have done this, we have never had a customer complaint or a regulatory complaint of any shape or form.
Our back up the truck moment is here. Just $10,000 into Keith Neumeyer's last 2 deals could have been turned into $1.8 million for investors. Now he's going all in with a gold acquisition company, a precious metal mineral bank. We consider this a gold portfolio must. Learn more at futuremoneytrends.com/fortune.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I am Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with just one of the most honest guys in the precious metals community. It's Andy Schectman, owner of Miles Franklin, the Trusted Bullion Dealer. And he's been in the industry now for decades and runs one of the most reputable companies in the industry. And just prior to this call, Andy was being honest with me. He was saying, you know what, in this community, you can still have some of the most deceitful people and lose a tremendous amount of money while you're seeking truth, while you're trying to purchase real money and get away from the fiat Ponzi scheme. You can still fall for a lot of pitfalls. And I want to have this conversation with him. Andy Schectman, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for such a grand introduction, Ken. I appreciate it, man, very, very much. Let me start this by really underscoring that I am not trying to toot my horn as it's going to ultimately sound, but it's really important to where I will lead to answer your first point. First and foremost, let's talk about Miles Franklin. We've been doing this 27 years. We have done just south of $6 billion in sales. And in the 27 years we have done this, we have never had a customer complaint or a regulatory complaint of any shape or form. You can spend all day, Ken, looking on Google, and you won't find one. And we're very proud of our reputation. We feel we've earned it. We've maintained an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau the entire length of time that we have been doing this. We're one of only 27 companies in the world on the U.S. Mint website. We were nominated by one of the 7 primary distributors about a half a dozen years ago. At the time, it was Prudential Beige, then got changed to Jeffries Beige, and subsequently, unfortunately, have left the space. The state of Minnesota, however, doesn't care about our reputation or our accreditation. State of Minnesota looked at the landscape of this industry, which is federally non-regulated, and saw what was akin to, I believe, the Wild West. They looked and saw that over the last 3 years, 3 companies have disappeared. The 3 biggest online companies have disappeared, and north of $70 million of client money is gone forever. 3 years ago it was Hannes Tolving. People always asked me why I couldn't compete with Hannes Tolving, and it almost made me feel, even though I knew the truth, that I was doing something wrong, because he would sell at our cost, virtually, and maybe make $1 a coin on gold, and he would pay for free overnight shipping. It's a model, if nothing else, that doesn't lead to success. Last year, it was Bullion Direct. Same exact questions by the customer, same exact pricing structure, same exact outcome. Tolving disappeared with $35 million, I believe, worth of client money or more. Bullion Direct disappeared with somewhere in the exact same neighborhood worth of client money.
So
gone
tell
for
us
good.
What that means. So the people paid, and then it was gone.
The people paid, the product never got delivered, and he filed bankruptcy. He had been running a Ponzi scheme, more or less. And the worst part about it all, if you had bought gold from Tolving 6 months prior to when he filed bankruptcy, U.S. bankruptcy law says you need to return that gold, or if you got a check from him within 6 months prior to him filing bankruptcy, you need to file, it's either 6 months or 90 days. I'm not positive. One or the other. I think it's 6 months. But bankruptcy clawback is what it is. So if you sold your gold to him and he sent you a check, I think it's 90 days now that I think about it, but it might be 6 months. Anyways, you can do that fact-checking yourself. But if you sent gold to him and he paid you a check, or you sent a check and you're one of the few that got your gold, within that clawback period, you had to send it back. You can Google all of this. I believe all of the money that they recouped from what he had by selling off all of his assets and everything was under $100,000 or $200,000 against many tens of millions of liabilities. People will never get that back, on forever. Same exact thing happened to Bullion Direct last year, and lo and behold, it happened again this year with Northwest Territorial Mint. Bankrupt and GoldSeek, Peter Stina's website, GoldSeek, came out with an article a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that basically said that they had been running a Ponzi scheme for the last several years as well, by offering things at prices that you cannot stay in business at those levels. And if it's too good to be true, I've got news for you. 99% of the time, it is. And so when the state of Minnesota looked at this and said, we don't care about your reputation, they didn't say that exactly, but that's what they're thinking. And in their, I believe, wisdom, developed the first and only regulations in this industry. If you are in the state of Minnesota, as we are licensed and bonded as if we sold securities. We have all sorts of regulations that nobody else in the United States has to abide by but us, if you're in the state of Minnesota. We have a surety bond in place that no one else has to have. Meaning, if we take off with your money, like Bullion Direct did, like Tolving did, like Northwest Territorial Mint did, there's a gigantic surety bond the state of Minnesota has in place to remunerate those people. All of our employees are background checked annually, and if anyone had a felony related to financial services, they're ineligible for the industry. And what I find to be shocking, to be honest with you, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe not shocking, but I guess surprising. Just about every company that I've ever come across in the last year has boycotted the state of Minnesota. None of them will, that I can think of. There might be one or two, but just about everyone I've looked at, if you go to their website and you type in you want your gold delivered to Minnesota, they say, sorry, we can't do it. Because they themselves would have to be subservient to the same regulations we are. Background checks, compliance officers, surety bond. This is all annual. It's not a one-time deal. Every year we have to go through this exact same process. And it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, and it's invasive, but it means that the client can't get ripped off. You put it all together, Ken, this is a federally non-regulated industry. There are a lot of companies out there who give misinformation. There are a lot of bait-and-switch companies. There are a lot of companies that are selling cheaper than anyone else. And if you look at that and ask yourself, how the hell are they doing it? Well, I don't know how they're doing it. It's the same answer that I gave to everyone else when they asked me about Tolving and Bullion Direct and Northwest Territorial Mint. I don't know how they're doing it. They're not making any money. And if you don't make money, you're not there when the people need you most because you're not able to stay in business. So,
and just to clarify, everyone, I was the one that wanted to talk about this with Andy. I want to bring up topics because a lot of people are interested in investing in gold and silver or other commodities, and you know what? They don't know where to start, and it's easy to get trapped. We're going to have a conversation today about some of the nuances and some of the pitfalls that maybe a new investor might deal with when purchasing gold or silver. How do you get started? Well, this is a good place to start. Andy, before we start talking about the individual metal, I want to ask you about, just the concept of if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And you know what? A lot of people feel that way, and they feel very safe about holding it. But you know what? The reality is, just like you can get your money, you see your paper money disappear, the fact is at your home, you can see your wealth disappear too. And there's just the fact that a burglar can come in your house and steal your precious metals, that is just as much of a threat as maybe some of the paper, or maybe not as much of a threat if you feel like you're armed well enough. But I want to get your thoughts here on that, owning precious metals, and what would your suggestion be in the pitfalls of having tons of metal at your house?
Sure. Well, I'll answer that first by saying that, we should, at the very end of this discussion on storage at home, talk about third-party storage, because for me, as the owner of a precious metals company with a family, it's very impractical for me to keep my holdings at home. I'm too high profile, unfortunately, to have the anonymity that most of your listeners would have. Most of your listeners would be owning gold, and most people would be surprised to know that they did. So the first rule of thumb is you don't tell anybody, ever, that you own your precious metals, other than maybe one person who you trust explicitly, a parent, a sibling, a child, or you put a note in a safe deposit box saying, hey, if you're reading this, unfortunately something's happened to me, and here are my holdings, and here are where they are. If we're keeping it at home, you have a plethora of options. To me, the worst thing to do is put everything in one big safe. That's the logical thing for people to do. Go buy a big gun safe. And in reality, if you're buying a lot of silver, that is probably one of your only options if you're storing it at home, to store it safely if you want it in a safe. But with gold, you can hide it all over the place. You can become a midnight gardener and bury it underground. If you put it in a PVC pipe 2 feet down, buried vertically, not horizontally, with rubber caps on the top and bottom, there is virtually not a metal detector on the planet that will find it. You could put it in multiple safes. So you buy that one safe and you put that safe in your office or in your basement or somewhere where someone would find it. And in that safe, you put enough stuff to appease anybody. But the little itty-bitty handgun safe that you can buy at any firearms store that, is roughly about 18 inches high by 12 inches wide by 4 or 5 inches deep, you can store $500,000 worth of gold in there. And those handgun safes have bolts in the back that you can bolt to any stud in your attic, under your stairs, behind a piece of sheetrock that you then recover, mud and tape and paint. If you need to in a hurry, you take a hammer to that sheetrock and break it open. But my point is that you can put a lot of gold in a very small place or places, hidden away very articulately, if you will, in places that you've given a lot of thought to, where nobody would find it, no matter how much time they have in your house. So that is the one drawback to owning gold. I mean, you could be as simple as going to Home Depot and getting an empty 1-gallon paint can. They sell those little silver 1-gallon paint cans. Right. Splash some paint on the outside of it and fill it with your gold coins and stick it in the basement with your other half-empty paint cans. Or you could get a bucket, a couple coffee cans, put nuts and bolts on them, put the gold in the bottom, and fill the top up with nuts and bolts. Mm. The point is that you have a lot of options to hide it in your home. And I think if you give it some thought and at least one person knows whom you trust where it is, because you wouldn't want that bucket of nuts and bolts getting thrown away, you can easily hide stuff and mitigate the anxiety, perhaps, that you would have having it all held centrally in one location.
Andy, you've given some information there that I think most people don't really talk about. We all talk about having, holding it, owning it, and buying guns. But you talked about really ways to protect your physical holding, and I really like that PVC in the ground. And that the fact that it can't be detected by a metal detector was really interesting as well. Andy, let's talk about the third-party storage facilities. To a lot of people, this kind of sounds like a bank. And I want to kind of explore that a little bit, because a lot of people are worried about, gold confiscation and things like that. And, do I really trust my gold in the hands of someone else? What makes you confident about these third-party storage facilities?
I want to answer that question, but first I want to just quickly mention my unique take that I believe, because I've never heard anyone else mention this but me. And I've been saying this exact same thing in all the talks that I've given over the last 5 years as far as confiscation. It's a question that I'm asked often. And I've always felt that that's the whole reason that they invented GLD and SLV. If you take a look at GLD, it's the 5th or 6th or 7th largest stockpile of gold in the world, and it's held by HSBC Bank. They're the administrator. If you look at SLV, used to be the single largest, now it's probably the second or third single largest stockpile of silver in the world. And it's held by the ultimate fox guarding the ultimate hen house, JP Morgan. So here you have two massive stockpiles of gold and silver held by the commercial banks that are right up there in the cartel, as they're called in these circles, those that manipulate the price through the futures market manipulations. They're holding all of this gold and silver. If you read the prospectus of GLD and SLV, pages 6 through 10 in particular, or 6 through 12, titled Risk Factors, if you really read it, and you read it a third time, I think you'd be blown away by what you see in there. The thing that I'm talking about as it pertains to confiscation is that unless you are an authorized participant, that's basically a commercial bank who funded extraordinarily large amounts of gold or silver into what they call a basket, the average person could never get their money back out in gold and silver. You can only be remunerated in cash. So they could come in on a Friday night and take all of the gold in GLD and all of the silver in SLV, because remember, supposedly, each share of these two funds represents physical metal. I believe it's 1/10 of an ounce per share in GLD and 10 ounces per share in SLV. And it's held by these custodians, so they could come in on a Friday night, close those two funds, look the world in the face and say, wait a second. We didn't activate eminent domain. We didn't take anything from our people. We didn't break any laws or infringe any civil liberties. All we've done is what the prospectus gives us the liberty to do. You can still go buy coins from a company like Miles Franklin. Go for it. My point to you is that I do believe confiscation, more than ever, is a tool to get people to buy high-priced numismatics. I don't think that you will see confiscation. I think if they did, it is checkmate and checkmate for sure, because if our creditors feared that type of nationalization of assets, Venezuelan style, if you will, they'd never, in fact, not only would they never trust us again and never buy our treasuries or our assets again, they'd probably so viciously dump treasuries and dollars quickly, fearing more nationalization of assets, that we'd see double-digit interest rates overnight. I don't think when countries like communist China and the majority of the world not only allow but also promote and endorse gold ownership, that the United States can afford to do that. So they create two vehicles that siphon up all the big money from the mutual funds and the hedge funds and all the big advisory firms, that when their clients say, we want gold, they want to keep them in-house, so they say, buy the ETFs. And that's why you have so much. So it's a really nice, convenient, easy, simple, less dangerous way, instead of going to someone's house who you know has got a handgun and probably doesn't like the government, try to take their gold. So I don't think we will see, per se, gold confiscation. I guess you may not. Now, as it pertains to storage, if you're going to store gold and silver somewhere, I think you want to do a little research on the depository that you're doing it with. We have two programs that I'm particularly fond of. Our first is in North Dakota with the Dakota Depository. Now, for me, I like the Dakota Depository for several reasons. Number one, That's where I run the logistics of my company. We have basically 5 full-time employees that are in Fargo, North Dakota, running our logistics. Our office is in Minneapolis. Our logistics are run out of the Dakota Depository in Fargo. I chose them for many reasons to run our logistics, but the biggest reason is that the geographic implications of North Dakota, to me, are far better than most of the big hubs, storage hubs on the East Coast, Delaware and New York City. Secondly, it is a level 2 military grade vault. It's fully insured by Lloyd's of London. It's staffed by ex-military. It's the real deal. And when you are choosing a facility, I think it's very, very, very important to make sure that they have a good reputation. It's not easy, not too hard, rather, to do a little Googling and check out reputation. The Dakota Depository is top-notch here in the United States. And I put my money where my mouth is, as we have roughly $25 million worth of company inventory, and I keep a lot of my own stuff there as well. If you're looking to get out of the country, our BRINKS program, I believe, is the finest you will find. It's really one of a kind. We have storage facilities in Montreal and in Vancouver with BRINKS. We are one of, if not the only, that I know of, facilities that charge clients based upon the number of ounces that they store at BRINKS rather than the value or a percentage of the asset value of the underlying funds. That's just about everyone else does. In other words, you're betting on the come when you bet in our facility, or when you store in our facility, rather, because as high as the price goes, your storage rate stays fixed. It doesn't matter how high the price goes, your rate stays fixed. So our program with BRINKS, we feel, is as good as anything you'll find structurally, but we partnered with BRINKS more specifically because of their reputation and the way that they do business. So for me, if you're going to store third party, make sure that it's in a place that you don't want, in my opinion, you don't want to store in New York City. You don't want to store in Los Angeles. You don't want to store in Chicago. You want to have your stuff stored in a geographic spot that is going to kind of be off the grid somewhat. If it's here in the United States, at least that's the way that I feel. And then if you're storing out of the country, I like Canada for many reasons. Aside from the fact that they're close by, you get there by car, they're politically stable, they're geopolitically stable, they're a friend of the United States, but I also feel that they would like to remain autonomous from any problems the United States have. It's a country bordered by 3 oceans, doesn't upset anybody. They're very, very resource rich in lumber, in forestry, in oil and gas, in precious metals. And I've watched companies like the Royal Bank of Canada pull out of the United States because maybe, just maybe, they don't want to be subservient to the U.S. regulations. I don't know. I just think it's a good place to store your money rather than having to get on a boat or an airplane and go 3,000 miles across the Atlantic to get it.
So, Andy, why are people, I mean, let's just put it out there, why are people having their metal stored in Canada versus the U.S., and do you think that's a good reason?
Yeah, well, I think it's always good to have money out of the country. I mean, Doug Casey always said that you should have your wealth in one country separate from your resident. Now, I don't know you want to have all your money out of the country, but, you know, currency controls, I think, would happen long before the idea of confiscation. Currency controls have happened before, and that's when they say you can't send your money out. And I think that, you know, getting your money out of the country in a form that is 100% invisible, legally no reporting, I believe, is proactively, is never a bad idea, and especially in a place like Vancouver or Montreal where it's readily accessible. Now, I really would like to tell you about a new program that I have at BRINKS, and contractually, I'm not able to tell you yet, unfortunately, Ken, and we should do another interview in a week or two. But we have been, I can't even say it in any other display. We have something revolutionary to offer that is unlike anything that the industry has seen in storage at BRINKS, and I should be able to talk about it very, very, very soon. We should do another interview, but suffice it to say, in our BRINKS Vancouver and soon-to-be Toronto location, we will be able to offer something that no one in the country, no one in the industry will be able to match or rival. The bottom line is, I think getting money out of the country in a proactive fashion is never a bad idea if it's readily accessible. And there are a lot of people who feel that currency controls are coming, that trouble is coming. Right, wrong, or indifferent, having money outside the U.S. That's easily accessible, that's very private, to me, has many more positives than it does negatives.
Yeah, good diversification. Well, and we certainly will do a follow-up interview to discuss that, because now I'm curious as to what that is. So, Andy, let's move over and talk about actual purchasing of bullion. And one thing that I do, and I actually did this with you when I made my last purchase with Miles Franklin, is I always ask, what are you going to buy this back for me at? If I was buying it today, or if I was selling it back to you today, what would you pay for it? And you know what? I think that's something that is important, to know, because then you kind of have an idea of what sort of premium you're paying on whatever it is you're buying. So there's a lot to talk about. I mean, you can buy very, very expensive coins, even American Eagles and things like that have higher premiums than, say, bullion rounds, which have low premiums and typically could sell for spot. And if you're interested in just the underlying metal, maybe that's the way to go, at least the way I see it. But I want to kind of get your thoughts on this, obviously being in the industry for many years, and just help us understand how to move forward in making decisions when purchasing precious metals.
No, there's no right or wrong answer. That's the first thing to say. There really isn't. There are many choices to choose from when buying gold or silver bullion. When you talk about what is the right way, for me, I have always preferred government-issued coins, because I think you'll never see you'll much more infrequently run across any government-issued coins that are ever counterfeit, because now you get into counterfeiting and legal tender, and it's a whole different ball of wax. And I think that the demand for the government-issued coins like the Eagle or the Maple Leaf really is far greater than just about anything else we sell. I'll give you an analogy. I live in Minnesota. Let's say the Vikings are going to go to the Super Bowl this year, and I'm going to have a big Super Bowl party. And I go to Costco here in Minneapolis, and let's say I'm going to have 100 people at my house, and I need to go buy soda for the party. I could buy 10 cases of Coke for $200, or I could buy the equivalent in generic Kirkland brand. That's the Costco, their generic brand. I could buy the equivalent amount for 70 cents on the dollar or 60 cents on the dollar. In the end, if my guests are thirsty enough, they'll be happy drinking the regular Kirkland brand soda. But if they had their druthers and the cans were lined up next to each other, I can assure you 98% of the people there are going to take the Coke over the Kirkland brand until the Coke is gone. That's kind of the way that I would say the difference between 1 ounce silver Buffalo rounds and 1 ounce silver Maple Leafs or Eagles. There's nothing wrong with it. It still drinks, still spends. But I think the name brand government issue coin always has greater demand, always bids higher, and it would represent the majority of the sales that we do here. Now, with that being said, the Buffalo round is pretty much industry standard and very widely recognized and accepted. But will save you at least, how almost $2 an ounce, $1.50 to $2 an ounce over government issued coins in buying the 1 ounce silver Buffalo round. In terms of your first statement, premium, it's also important for your listeners to differentiate the word premium from commission. A premium is the amount of money that it costs to buy these coins based upon many fundamentals, typically supply and demand more than anything. But to buy them from a wholesale level, whether it be from the refiner that makes the 1 ounce rounds, how much did it cost him to get the 1,000 ounce bar and manufacture the 1 ounce round and package them and distribute them to me? How much did he make above its melt value? Or from the U.S. Mint or from the Canadian Mint, they have the cost of production, distribution, running the mint, advertising, and all of the things associated with how much above the price they sell the coins to someone like me. And so the bottom line is premium is a function of supply and demand and has nothing to do with how much money we make. Our commission is added on top of the premium. Anyone who sells gold and silver in this industry makes a very, very small amount above the industry-known premium. But premium is something that it has a value unto itself. And in 2008, as an example, when the price of silver overnight fell from 21 to 9, it fell by 60%. Within a week, every major mint and every major refinery and every major dealer in the United States was out of product. Couldn't find anything. Gone. Nothing. For weeks on end. And when they finally came back online, the U.S. and the Canadian Mint later that year, about 2 months later, the premiums for me to buy in large quantities from either mint was roughly 95%. In other words, we had $9 silver, I was buying them for $17+ and I had to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get it. So I had to pay the mint and not get the product for 6 to 8 weeks. And that would have been the same with anyone in this country. You would pay me a 100% premium. You'd pay almost $18 on top of a $9 per ounce silver to get Silver Eagles or Maple Leafs, and you'd wait 6 to 8 weeks to get it. That is a classic situation where premium was affected by the lack of supply and the overabundance of demand. And so our commission in this industry, if you mark things up more than 2%, even on small orders, you've outpriced yourself. So it's a very competitive industry. We make on most occasions 1% or less, and you have to. It's a volume-based business, and so our buyback, if you buy it from us, we pretty much guarantee no one in the industry will beat our buyback because we don't make any commission buying it back. We offer as high or higher a bid price than anyone in the industry from anyone who buys from us because we're not going to charge you a buyback commission. It's been in all of our literature for 27 years. So in terms of buyback, it's a question people should ask more. Not enough people do. In terms of two-way, buy and sell, we're as competitive as anyone in the industry.
Andy, I've been chewing on that analogy that you've brought up with the Coca-Cola and the Kirkland, the discount product versus the premium product. And not to poke holes in the analogy at all, I hope you know me well enough that I'm a friend here, but I just feel like the underlying silver is the Coca-Cola. That's what people want. So there's a floor for the Buffalo. There's a floor for the round.
Well, I agree with that. If we go back to 2008 as an example, the generic rounds had a $4.50 premium, and the Maple Leafs and Eagles had a $9 an ounce premium. Not to say it's just an issue of supply and demand. The demand. If we did $200 million, about $225 million in sales last year, or maybe a little more, I'm not sure, a little higher, I think. But of all of that, I would say maybe 10% of sales would have gone to generic silver. Of all the sales we did in silver, probably 10%. The majority went to Eagles, Maple Leafs, Kangaroos. There is just a greater demand for the government-issued coins over the generics. Now, you're right. I do agree with you. And that's why I said first and foremost that there is no right or wrong, and that the silver drinks just like the it spends just like the generic soda drinks. It's just an issue of, and I think you are no different, Ken, and I know you well enough to think, if I were standing right in front of you and offered you 20 Silver Eagles or 20 Silver Buffaloes generic, what would you choose 10 out of 10 times?
The Eagles, of course, yeah.
Well, and that's pretty much the way the industry works. And so on Buffaloes, I may bid 20 cents over the price of silver. On Silver Eagles, I'm going to bid, about close to $2 over. So that's just what it gets down to, is that there is no right or wrong way to do it. When people call me and are on limited budgets and trying to maximize the amount of silver they want, or even if they're not on limited budgets, they want to maximize the amount of silver, let me say this to you. 10 times out of 10, I'd rather see you buy all Buffalo rounds, 1 ounce, or any 1 ounce round, generic 1 ounce round, than buying a 10 or 100 ounce bar. I think that the amount of savings you get by trying to maximize, and even worse yet, 1,000 ounce bars, you cross over the penny wise, pound foolish line very, very quickly. And so if maximizing the amount of silver is your ultimate game, you can't go wrong with buying the Buffalo rounds. They would be my personal second choice to either any of the 1 ounce coins made from the U.S., Canadian, or Australian mint. To me, they just give me greater peace of mind.
Yeah,
that's all.
No, and I appreciate that answer, and it helps me understand. And I know a lot of our audience. I mean, they're new. They want to get involved, and it just kind of takes them to the next level of understanding and having that confidence to actually buy. Andy, you mentioned counterfeit, and I guess let's just kind of end on this here and the pitfalls with counterfeit coins. How big of an issue is counterfeit?
It's crazy, Ken. It's crazy, man. I'll tell you, it is. All of a sudden. And I've never said this before. I would always tell people I'd never seen a counterfeit coin before, ever. In the first 25 years I've done this, I never saw anything counterfeit, ever. The only thing, I take that back, the only thing that I ever, and I never even saw it, was sent to us, was an old numismatic coin that was determined to be modern produced counterfeit, but it was still gold. Now, in the past several weeks, we've received a lot of counterfeit stuff. We have very high-tech machinery to detect it. First, we found some Krugerrands that were counterfeit, and they were inside of tubes of 20 coins per tube with mostly all real coins, but stuffed inside were a couple of fakes. And, you buy that on eBay, you're not going to notice, you're screwed. Just the other day, a really good client of mine, and if he's listening to this, he'll know who he is. He lives in Italy, and he unfortunately had to come home because his mother is gravely ill. Before he met me, he was doing a lot of buying on eBay. And he emailed me as he was boarding the plane from Italy, saying that he was having a family friend send me roughly 2,000, it was 80 or 100 Morgan silver dollars that he had bought on eBay several years back before meeting me. And I've never seen this before and wouldn't even ever think of it. Every single one of them are fake.
Wow.
And we figured it out by, putting them on and doing we have a machine that tells you what the composite is. And they were totally fake. So now he's come to the U.S. and has no money as a result. So the point of it is that fakes are becoming an issue. And the moral of the story is you better buy stuff. And that's one of the reasons, personally, that I like the Eagles, the Maple Leafs. They've gone to great lengths to protect counterfeiting, especially the Canadian Mint. And that's why most of what I sell is actually Royal Canadian Mint product. They have laser engraved counterfeit proof coins. And so I think it's real. And the last thing that you want to do, Ken, is find out that the silver you've been holding in your safe for the last 12 years is crap. So that's why I buy stuff that I buy directly from the U.S. Mint, and that's why everything that we take in, we know it's 100% legit. If I buy a bag of silver dimes, junk silver, a full bag's $10,000. We pay people to go through every single dime wearing a jeweler's loop and go through every single one by one, to make sure they're real. We go to great lengths to make sure that everything that we either take in or sell is what it's supposed to be. So it is an issue, more so than and if you would have had this interview with me at any time up until the last year or so, I would have said it's not an issue whatsoever, never seen a fake one. I would have thought it's almost impossible to counterfeit a coin because of the size of it. But I think that's why you stay with name brand stuff right there.
Wow. Well, everyone, be careful out there. And Andy, I think this is going to be one of those interviews I'm going to have to listen to a couple times, because there's just so much to digest. And you really, even for me, someone who's been buying now for some years, not so much selling. I think the only time silver has left my possession has been if I just was giving it to someone, not because I was actually selling my
right.
Gold or silver. But you know what? I really appreciate you coming on and just helping us wrap our minds around the understanding of purchasing precious metals, the pitfalls of it. And I just want to give you an opportunity here. If people want to learn more about Miles Franklin or how they can reach out to you, please let them where they can go and what they can expect.
Sure. So Andy Hoffman, who's a guest on your show and on Daniel's show, I know, writes our daily newsletter, and he's one of a kind. There's really no one like him, I think. And we publish a free daily newsletter at milesfranklin.com. Our new website is up. We plan to, by October 1st, allow online purchasing. We are just beta testing that platform right now. Of course, you'll be able to buy online. You can always call us. We are a relationship-based business. I resisted for many years building a website that will allow people to buy online. I think it's better to communicate, and I think where we're heading in this industry, relationships will be very important. So you can always call us. Our main number is 1-800-822-8080. Again, make sure you check back in the next 2 weeks or so on our new program at BRINKS. I'm not joking. There's nothing like it, and people are going to go crazy for it. And, of course, I certainly appreciate being on the show. I want to say one last thing. I don't mean to sound like we're the only company out there who's honest. There's a lot of good companies out there. There really are, and a lot of honest people out there, and I know lots of them. But if I had one piece of advice, and one piece of advice only, it would be this. If you're going to a heart surgeon to save your life, if you're going to a attorney to represent you for the biggest case of your life, or if you're protecting your wealth, which could be the most important thing for your future, don't go to the cheapest person online. And if you're gonna, at least call them, get to know them, and talk to them. Don't just go to the cheapest online company, because it's a model for disaster, and it's proven that for the last 3 years. So I guess, I don't want to make it sound like we're the only honest company out there. There's a lot of good companies. Hopefully your listeners will give us a shot, but stay away from the cheapest of the cheap. It's a problem.
Yeah. It's great advice right there. Andy Schectman, everyone. Andy, thanks for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure, Ken. Anytime. Thanks for having me.